Hi, brothers and sisters. I hope you had a wonderful conference and a great Easter. And if you were there with us in primary this last week, we're so glad to have seen you again. And if you weren't, we hope to see you soon. Thanks for giving me a little bit of break on these. And I'm back and ready to do them for at least a little bit longer. I don't know what the future holds, but here's this week. We are learning about Doctrine and Covenants, section 41 to 44, my law to govern my church. So let's talk about laws for just a minute. Section 41 talks about God's laws. Now you could talk about this by talking about some of our laws. You could print out pictures or look on the computer at pictures of different road signs, a stop sign, a yield sign, maybe some signs that we don't see as often, a railroad sign, an S-curve sign, a school crossing sign, a parking sign, all of these different signs that we see on the roads all the time, and talk about what they mean. You could play a little game where everyone has to guess what the sign means. You could come up with some really obscure signs that nobody's ever seen before that are from different areas of the country where they have to deal with things like rock slides or avalanches. We may not know what those signs look like, and so people may need to guess what the signs are that you pull up. You could also print out the little signs and put them around the room and get out toy cars and pretend to drive through the traffic. Or even, if you wanted to do a life-size version, put them around the house, put a child inside a box and push them around, have them pretend that they are driving the car and having to obey all the different traffic signs. As you're experiencing these signs in whatever way you choose, you can talk about the different rules that presents when you are driving a car and the ways that helps us stay safe. There may even be some signs that you didn't understand or that a parent, when the parent first started driving, didn't think was that important. But there may be situations that those signs will keep someone safe. Just like Heavenly Father's commandments and rules and laws are always meant for our good, even if we don't understand them. Section 42 talks about consecrating. Now, this is a concept that can be a little bit confusing, especially when we're used to being in a home where we constantly talk about what's fair. Have you ever said, well, she gets this and that's not fair to me? Have you ever felt that way in your home with one of your brothers or sisters? It's really, really normal to feel like, well, that person gets something that I don't get and that's not fair. Or I'm having to do more work than her and that's not fair. The principle of consecration is not about being fair, at least not in the way that we understand. We know that Heavenly Father will make everything fair in the end, and we just have to trust that. So I want you to imagine for just a second that you are doing some baking in the kitchen. If you have a spatula, you can do quite a bit with just a spatula. You could mix the whole thing with a spatula. You could scrape the bowl down with a spatula. You could spread it out in the pan with a spatula. But it'd be a little bit hard to measure flour. It'd be really hard to measure flour with a spatula. You could probably scoop some flour into the bowl, and if you knew enough about baking, you could probably get about a cup. You'd probably be about right, but it'd be pretty hard to measure with this. Now, it's a lot easier to bake or to work in the kitchen. It would be a lot easier to cook in the kitchen if you had more utensils. You could use this for mixing. You could use this for scraping the bowl. And if you were making something like muffins or pancakes, you could use something like a ladle to scoop it out into portions. But I still don't have something to measure with. So what if someone else in our family has a measuring cup? Do they have to give you the measuring cup? Or can you work together? Because it'd be pretty hard for them to mix with only a measuring cup. But if you can work together and combine the tools that you have, then it'd be a lot easier. And that's kind of what consecration is all about. Some people have one tool, some people have many tools, but if we all work together and use someone else's whisk when we need to, and they use our measuring cup when they need to, then it all works out. We all have what we need when we need it. So you can use this in your home. You could give everyone in the house a different utensil, or some people get only one, and some people get 3, and some people get 5, and some people get 2. You could give everyone different numbers of utensils and talk about how sharing the utensils, sharing the tools, helps us to get the job done. For those with older families, you can even take that a step further and talk about people who have no tools at all. What can they give? And how is it fair that everyone else has to give them tools when they need it, when they have no tools to give? But can they still mix? If someone lets them borrow a whisk, can they still mix? If someone lets them borrow a measuring cup, can they still measure? Absolutely. Everyone has something to give. That's Heavenly Father's message. Everyone is important. Everyone is worth helping. So even the poor and the needy, who don't have any resources to give, can still be a part of the work through the law of consecration. Section 42 also talks about living together in love. Now think for just a minute about what your home would feel like if you lived together in love. Would it be a lot like the home that you live in today? Or would it be a little bit different? What would be different about that home? Something you might consider doing is, if you've ever heart attacked someone's door, this is a similar idea. We used to cut out hearts in my home and we would laminate them. You wouldn't have to laminate it, or you could even just put pieces of clear tape across it on the front and the back, which helps keep it a little bit sturdier as you're using it. And each person in our family would get 1 heart or 3 hearts or something like that. And and my mom would set apart a week that we would be using these hearts. And all week long, we would look for ways to serve other members in the family. We would sneak in and make someone's bed while they were at breakfast without them knowing it. And without telling them who it was, we would just leave a heart so that they knew that they had been served. Or we would really quick empty the dishwasher for them before they got home from school and leave a heart so that they knew that they had been served. Sometimes we would leave a little treat or a little game or print out a coloring page that we thought they would enjoy and leave it somewhere for them to find with a heart, for them to know that they had been served. And those were really special little experiences, knowing that someone in my family had been thinking of me. And once I got a heart, it was then my chance to find a way to use it with someone else in the family. Section 42 also talks about God's mysteries. This is something we hear about all the time in the Doctrine and Covenants, that God has all of these mysteries, but they're mysteries that can be solved because he wants you to know what he knows. He tells you line upon line, precept upon precept, a little bit of knowledge upon a little bit of knowledge. He won't give you all of it at once because your brain cannot handle all of God's knowledge at once. It just can't. So he will give you little tiny puzzle pieces just at a time. Think about something that you are curious about. Maybe you are fascinated by space. Maybe you love learning about the human body. Maybe you want to learn more about different kinds of rocks or how to bake better cupcakes. What would you do to help yourself understand that a little bit better? If you wanted to learn more about the planet Mars, what would you do? You might get on the computer and learn a little bit about Mars. You might go to the library and check out a book about Mars. Heavenly Father loves it when we are curious about everything. He loves it when you learn about Mars. But he also wants us to be curious about things about the gospel. So just like you would go to the library and check out a book about Mars to learn more about it, how could you learn more about a gospel question that you have? Who could you go to? How could you understand the concepts that God understands a little bit better?